everyone, today we're going to continue graphing sine and cosine, and we're going to also write equations. So what we're going to do is we're going to first just one more time go through graphing. I'm going to give you an equation, we find the information, then we graph it. And then we're going to move on to going backwards. I'm going to give you the graph, you're going to find the information, and then write the equation. So let's get started on number 1. So the amplitude is 4, because that's the number in front. My vertical shift, -3. My phase shift is 0 because I didn't move anywhere. My period, 2 pi over b, and in this case b is 2, but the 2's cancel to give me pi. Remember, the interval is period over 4, so my period is pi over 4 for the interval. So, since my phase shift is 0, my x values are going to start at 0. Then my period is pi, so from start to finish, I'm going to travel 1 pi. But I'm graphing 2 periods, so the end of my second period will be at 2 pi. So the first thing I'm going to do one period first and then move on to the second. So again, cut it in half and then cut both of those segments in half, so you have 4 equal pieces, and you get to count by pi over 4. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. Okay, we can keep going, but we're going to do that second. So the other thing that I have is a vertical shift of -3. So 1, 2, 3. And then my amplitude, all right, well, let's draw this vertical or horizontal line, first. So I know that that is my new midline. My amplitude is 4, so I'm going up to 1 and down to -7. So that's putting all of this information on your graph. And we're going to worry about our second period in a minute. So this is a positive cosine, so it needs to start at the max. Next point it'll be at the middle, then at the bottom, in the middle, back to the top. So we have a positive cosine curve. Okay? So that's one period. And then I'm going to continue on in the second one. So my second period is going to go between pi and 2 pi, because that's a total distance of 1 pi. And I'm still counting by 1/4, so you do have to remember that 1 pi is 4 over 4. So this would be 5 over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, and 2 pi is 8 pi over 4. So I'm at pi at the top, so the next is in the middle. Go to the bottom, back to the middle, back to the top, right? Always the same pattern. All right, so that's how you graph 2 periods for that given equation. So number 2, I want you to do a different example than what is there. So cross out what you have, please, and write down this problem. So I have y equals -2 sine 1/2 x plus pi. So let's go through this one. So my amplitude is 2, always positive. My vertical shift is 0 because I don't have anything on the end. My phase shift, again, is on the inside. That's going to be -pi because it's always the opposite. Period is 2 pi over b, and in this case b is 1/2, so that is equal to 4 pi. And then to find my interval, I take that period, divide it by 4, which is 1 pi. Okay, so now we need to get this on the graph. So my phase shift is -pi, so I need to put that here, -pi. Then I need to travel 4 pi. So -pi plus 4 pi is 3 pi. Okay, so the total distance between start to finish is 4 pi. So before I move to the next one, I'm going to have to go another 4 pi, which would give me 7 pi, right? Because 3 plus 4 is 7. And then we'll worry about that second cycle in just a minute. So what I know is I need to figure out my x-axis, and I'm counting by 1 pi. So -pi plus pi is 0, plus pi, then 2 pi, then 3 pi. All right, that one's easy. It's super nice when you're not dealing with fractions, right? -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. My amplitude is 2, so my midline is still 0, so I'm going up to positive and -2. And I have a negative sine curve. So sine starts at the midline. In this case, my x values, again, they always start at the phase shift, so negative pi. And I'm going down since it's negative, so down to negative 2, back to the middle, up to the top, back to the middle, to draw one period of this sine curve. Alright, and then we can draw our second period. I like to do one period at a time just so I know that it's the right shape. Right, this is what a negative sine looks like. So, between 3 and 7, I need 3 tick marks to have 4 equal pieces. So 3 pi plus pi is 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi, 7 pi. And I'm just going to continue the pattern. So I'm at the middle, so I have to go down before I can come back to go to the top and back to the middle. Alright, so there are my 2 periods for this equation. Alright, so we're going to move on to moving backwards. Again, you can pause this, you can rewind this, you can, rewatch bits and pieces of it, but make sure if you have questions, you're writing them down somewhere on this sheet of paper so you can ask them the next time we meet. So now we're going to be graphing, or we're going to be given the graphs, and then we're going to write the equation of the trig function. So the trig function could be sine or cosine. You can find either in any given graph. Now one's going to be a little bit easier than the other, but you certainly can find both. But for now we're just going to pick one. I always look at 0 and figure out where my x values start. Well, it looks like my x values are starting at the midline, going down, and then back up. So I'm going to keep track of the information. So this looks like a negative sine curve, right? Because it starts in the middle and then it goes down. I need my amplitude. And if you're not sure what information to pick, well, it's the same information we got before. So now I'm just giving you the graph, and we're going backwards. So the amplitude is the distance from the midline. Now they drew the midline for you, which is super nice. And I can count that I'm going 2 up and 2 below. So my amplitude is 2. The midline represents a vertical shift. Well, the midline is at -1, so my vertical shift is at -1. You need to figure out if you have a phase shift. Well, since my x values are starting at 0, I don't have a phase shift. It is 0. And my period is going from 0 to 4 pi, right? I'm starting at x values at 0 and back to the beginning at 4 pi. So my period is 4 pi. What I need to remember is that my period is equivalent to 2 pi over b. And remember, I need the b value, not the period, in my equation. So I have 4 pi equals 2 pi over b. And then you have to solve. So I'm going to multiply both sides by b. So 4 pi times b is equal to 2 pi. And then to get b by itself, I divide both sides by 4 pi. Pi's cancel, I get 1/2. So once I have all of this information, I can write my equation. Again, I have my type of graph, my amplitude, vertical shift, phase shift, period, but I really need b to go in my equation. So I decided that it's a negative sine curve based on the shape. So my amplitude is my amplitude is 2, but I need it negative. So -2 sine. My b value is 1/2. I have no phase shift, so I don't have anything on the inside other than that 1/2. And then my vertical shift is -1, and the vertical shift always goes on the end. So the idea is that you got to look at the graph, you got to pick out the important information, and then know where it goes in your equation. Okay, so let's do number 4. So this one, my x values again start at 0, but they start at the top at 8, come down, and they reach 8 again. And that to me looks like a positive cosine. I need my amplitude, and I need my vertical shift. So they haven't drawn the midline for us, so we have to find it. So if my max is at 8, and my minimum is at -4, the halfway point between those two is 2. So my vertical shift is 2, because the distance from both -4 and 8 to +2 is 6. My amplitude is 6. Since my x values start at 0, I have a phase shift of 0. And my period, meaning I start at the top and end at the top after 2 pi radians. So my period is 2 pi. Which is good because that means 2 pi over 1 is 2 pi over b. So b is just 1. So my amplitude is 6. It's a positive cosine, so 6 cosine. I didn't change the period, right? B is 1, so it's just going to stay 1x or just x. And then my vertical shift is 2. And that's it. So that's how you write the equation. The only other thing is that you could find a sine curve, right? From here to here, I can look for a sine curve, which means I'd have a phase shift, which is why cosine is a little bit easier. But you certainly could write a sine equation as well, but we'll talk more about that when we get to class the next time. Make sure you write down any questions that you have. See you then.